I swapped my cheating husband's lube for glue, and the firefighters had to pull them apart. You know, there are moments in life that split your world clean in two, before and after. The day I found that tube wasn't dramatic. No thunder, no screaming, no broken dishes. Just me, a Tuesday morning, and a car that needed cleaning. But that little tube, hidden where he thought I'd never look, changed everything I thought I knew about the man I'd spent 30 years loving. They say ignorance is bliss, but let me tell you something, dear. Sometimes knowledge is power. And sometimes, that power comes in the smallest, most unexpected packages. Welcome, my dear. This is Grandma Alice Stories, where every tale carries a lesson and every wound carries wisdom. Pour yourself some tea, settle into that chair, and listen close. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't just about betrayal. It's about patience, about justice, and about how sometimes the universe needs just a tiny push to set things right. Some stories are hard to tell, but they're important. This is one of them. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were always my cleaning day. The house first, then the cars if I had time. Thomas had left for work early that morning, kissing my cheek the way he had for 3 decades, his cologne lingering in the kitchen long after his truck pulled out of the driveway. "Love you, Alice," he'd called over his shoulder. I'd smiled and waved, drying my hands on the dish towel I'd embroidered myself years ago. That word used to mean something solid between us. The morning sun was gentle as I headed outside with my bucket and rags. Our neighborhood was the kind where everyone knew everyone, where Mrs. Patterson walked her terrier at exactly 8:30, where the Rodriguez twins rode their bikes in synchronized circles, where life felt predictable and safe. I'd lived in this house since Thomas carried me over the threshold in 1995, young and foolish and so full of dreams. His car sat in the driveway, a silver sedan he'd bought 2 years ago. "For work," he'd said. "Clients like a professional appearance." I'd been proud of him then, my hard-working husband, always striving to provide better for us. I opened the passenger door and the scent hit me first, something sweet and artificial, like cheap perfume. Not my scent. I wore the same lilac water I'd worn since our wedding day. This was different. Younger. My chest tightened, but I pushed the feeling down. Maybe a client. Maybe nothing. I leaned in to vacuum the floor mats, reaching under the seat for any trash that might have collected there. My fingers brushed against receipts, a crumpled napkin, and then, something smooth. Cylindrical. Cold. I pulled it out into the sunlight. A tube of personal lubricant. Clinical. Unmistakable. Time stopped. The birds still sang. Mrs. Patterson still walked past with her terrier. The world kept spinning, but mine had just lurched sideways. I stood there in my driveway, holding that tube like it might explode, my mind racing through every possible innocent explanation and finding none that fit. We hadn't needed such things. We barely touched anymore, if I'm being honest. Something I'd attributed to age, to tiredness, to the natural cooling that comes with decades together. It's normal, I told myself during those long nights when he'd turn away, claiming exhaustion. We're not young anymore. But apparently he wasn't too tired for someone. I looked at our house, the yellow paint I'd chosen, the rose bushes I'd planted, the porch where we'd sipped lemonade through countless summers. Everything looked the same, but nothing would ever be the same again. That's the thing about betrayal. It reaches backward through time, tainting every memory, making you question every smile, every "I love you," every moment you thought was real. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. I expected tears, rage, some dramatic movie moment. Instead, I felt cold. Analytical. Like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. I placed the tube in my pocket and finished cleaning the car. Every motion was mechanical, vacuumed the seats, wiped the dashboard, cleaned the windows. When I was done, his car gleamed. Perfect. Just like the life I'd thought we had. Inside the house, I sat at our kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared 30 years of meals, where we'd celebrated birthdays and anniversaries, where just that morning he'd eaten the eggs I'd cooked and kissed my cheek. The tube sat in front of me like evidence in a trial I never wanted to attend. I thought about confronting him. Pictured his face, the denials that would come, or worse, the confession. The apologies. The excuses. It didn't mean anything. I was weak. I still love you. All the tired lines from all the tired scripts of men who got caught. But here's what 30 years of marriage teaches you. Sometimes words are just noise. Sometimes actions speak in a language that can't be argued with or explained away. I picked up the tube and studied it. Unopened. Waiting. He'd placed it there for convenience, for his next encounter, probably thinking himself clever for keeping it in the car where his unsuspecting wife would never find it. A thought began to form, quiet at first, like a whisper in the back of my mind. Then louder. Clear. I walked to my computer and searched industrial adhesive glue. The internet, for all its flaws, is remarkably helpful when you need information. I found what I was looking for within minutes. A clear, odorless, fast-acting adhesive that bonded skin instantly. Medical-grade solvents required for separation. Used in manufacturing. Definitely not for personal application. The hardware store was 3 blocks away. I drove there in a daze, my heart finally starting to pound. Was I really going to do this? What kind of woman was I becoming? But then I thought about the lies. The late nights. The business trips that suddenly made sense in a horrible new way. The times he'd come home smelling like someone else's soap. All the signs I'd ignored because I wanted to believe in us, in him, in the life we'd built. Some women scream. Some women cry. Some women forgive. I bought the glue. Back home, I worked carefully at the kitchen sink. The tube of lubricant was easy to open, easy to empty down the drain. The adhesive went in smoothly, filling it to the same level as before. I sealed it back up, wiped it clean, and studied my handiwork. Perfect. Indistinguishable from the original. My heart wasn't pounding anymore. My hands were steady. I felt something I hadn't felt in years, powerful. Not angry, not sad, just clear. Like I'd finally stopped being the woman things happened to and became the woman who decided what happened next. I placed the tube back under the passenger seat, exactly where I'd found it. Then I went inside, made myself a cup of tea, and waited. 3 days passed. 3 days of normal, breakfast, dinner, small talk, routine. Thomas was attentive, even affectionate. You seem different, he said one evening, studying my face. Peaceful. Do I? I smiled softly. Maybe I'm just grateful for what I have. He'd kissed my forehead, never knowing that gratitude wasn't quite the right word. On the 3rd night, a Friday, he said he needed to work late. Quarterly reports, he explained, grabbing his keys. Don't wait up. Drive safe, I called from the kitchen. I watched through the window as his taillights disappeared down the street. Then I poured myself a glass of wine, sat on the porch, and listened to the evening sounds of our neighborhood settling into the night. Somewhere out there, a tube of glue was waiting. And so was I. The sirens came at 10:47 p.m. At first, they were distant, a wail that could have been heading anywhere. But they grew louder, closer. And then I saw the lights painting our street red and blue, and I knew. I knew before the ambulance stopped 3 blocks away. I knew before the neighbors started emerging from their houses. I knew before Mrs. Patterson clutched her terrier and gasped at whatever scene was unfolding in that parking lot behind the office building. I set down my wine glass, my hand perfectly steady, and wondered if I should feel guilty. But all I felt was curious about what comes next. The sirens grew louder, and with them came the neighbors. Like moths drawn to flame, they emerged from their tidy houses in bathrobes and slippers, craning their necks toward the commotion 3 blocks down. I stayed on my porch, sipping my wine slowly, watching the red and blue lights paint the oak trees in colors that seemed almost festive. Mrs. Patterson was the first to reach my front yard, her terrier yapping at her heels. Alice, did you hear? Something terrible happened at the office complex. They're saying it's some kind of accident. Her voice dropped to a scandalized whisper on that last word, the way people do when they're thrilled by tragedy but trying to appear concerned. Oh my, I said softly, setting down my glass. I hope everyone's all right. Should we walk down there? See if anyone needs help. She was already moving toward the street, pulled by that irresistible human need to witness disaster. I stood slowly, smoothing my skirt. I suppose we should check. Community responsibility and all. The lie tasted like nothing on my tongue. We walked together, me, Mrs. Patterson, the Rodriguez family, old Mr. Chen from the corner house. A parade of concerned citizens in the warm night air, following the sirens like children following the Pied Piper. My heart beat steadily in my chest. Not racing. Not anxious. Just alive. More alive than I'd felt in years. The office complex parking lot was lit up like a stadium. 2 ambulances, a fire truck, and 3 police cars created a circus of emergency response. A crowd had already gathered behind the yellow tape, and I could hear the murmurs, that electric buzz of gossip being born. Stuck together. Had to call specialized units. Never seen anything like it. I positioned myself at the edge of the crowd, just another concerned neighbor, just another face in the darkness. Mrs. Patterson was already interrogating a young paramedic who looked like he was trying very hard not to laugh. "It's a delicate situation, ma'am," he was saying, his professional mask slipping. "We need special solvents. The fire department has experience with industrial adhesives, but this is unique." "But what happened?" Mrs. Patterson pressed. "Was it a workplace accident?" The paramedic glanced around, then leaned in. "Let's just say 2 people got a little too close in one of the offices, and they're having trouble separating." The crowd erupted in whispers. Mrs. Patterson's hand flew to her mouth. Someone behind me giggled nervously. And then they brought out the gurney. I'd imagined this moment, of course, during those 3 days of waiting. But imagination is a pale ghost compared to reality. Reality was 2 people, covered partially by sheets, wheeled out on a single stretcher because they literally couldn't be moved apart. Reality was my husband's face, red, twisted in humiliation and pain, turned toward the crowd, his eyes desperately searching for escape and finding none. Reality was her. Maybe 30. Dark hair, wide, terrified eyes, her mascara running in black rivers down her cheeks. His secretary. The one he'd mentioned occasionally, always casually. Jessica's organizing the files. Jessica scheduled my appointments. Jessica, who was now bonded to him in the most intimate way possible, in front of God and everyone we knew. The crowd gasped collectively. Someone whispered a name. "Isn't that Thomas Baker?" And then another voice. "And that's his secretary from the real estate office." The whispers spread like wildfire. Thomas's eyes swept the crowd, and for one brief, crystalline moment, they found mine. Recognition. Or understanding. He opened his mouth, but whether to call my name or plead or explain, I'll never know, because the paramedics were moving quickly, loading the gurney into the ambulance, and then the doors closed on his shame. Mrs. Patterson turned to me, her face stricken. "This, wasn't that?" "Yes," I said quietly. "That was my husband." Her hand gripped my arm. "Oh, you poor thing. You must be devastated. What on earth was he doing here? What happened?" I let my face crumple just a little, not too much, just enough. I don't understand." He said he was working late. He said. I trailed off, allowing the implications to paint themselves in everyone's minds. The crowd's attention shifted to me. Poor Alice Baker. Faithful wife. 30 years of marriage. Betrayed so publicly, so grotesquely. I could feel their pity washing over me like a warm bath, and underneath it, their hunger for more details, more scandal, more tragedy to discuss over tomorrow's coffee. "Someone should take you home," Mr. Chin said gently. "You shouldn't be alone tonight." "I'll be all right," I whispered. I need to sit down." They escorted me back to my house like I was made of glass, settling me on my porch with offers of tea, phone calls, company. I declined everything with gentle grace, the picture of shocked dignity. "I just need some time to process this. Please. Thank you all for your concern." When they finally dispersed, reluctantly, still whispering among themselves, I sat in my porch chair and looked up at the stars. They were beautiful tonight, sharp and clear in the autumn sky. Indifferent to human drama. Eternal. My phone rang. The hospital. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. I turned it off. Inside my house, my quiet, peaceful house, I poured another glass of wine and sat at the kitchen table. The same table where Thomas had eaten breakfast 3 days ago, kissed my cheek, told me he loved me. The same table where I'd emptied that tube and refilled it with justice. Did I feel guilty? People would expect that. People would expect tears, breakdown, crisis. But here's what I felt: free. The next morning, my phone had 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. I made coffee first, my ritual, my anchor. Then I listened to the voicemails. The hospital: Mrs. Baker, your husband has been admitted. Please call us regarding his treatment and billing. My daughter Sarah, panicked, Mom, I saw it on Facebook. What's happening? Are you okay? Call me. My son Michael, Mom, Dad's secretary called me. Something about an accident? What the hell is going on? Thomas's business partner, Alice, I'm so sorry. If there's anything you need. And finally, Thomas himself. His voice was small, broken, unrecognizable. Yes, please. We need to talk. I can explain. It's not, please just come to the hospital. Please. I deleted them all. Instead, I called my daughter. Sarah, sweetheart. Yes, I'm fine. Your father had an accident. No, I don't want to discuss details. Can you call your brother? I need some time to think. Mom, what kind of accident? People say a lot of things, honey. Most of them aren't our business. I need a few days. I love you. I hung up before she could press further. The doorbell rang around noon. I expected Mrs. Patterson or another neighbor, but when I opened the door, I found a young police officer looking uncomfortable. Mrs. Baker? I'm Officer Martinez. I need to ask you a few questions about last night. My heart jumped just slightly, but my face remained calm. Of course, officer. Would you like to come in? He followed me to the living room, his notebook already open. Mrs. Baker, we're investigating the incident involving your husband. The hospital reported that the substance involved appears to be industrial adhesive rather than, well, what your husband claims he thought it was. His eyes were sharp, watching my reaction. Do you know anything about how that might have happened? I met his gaze steadily, my hands folded in my lap like a woman with nothing to hide. Officer, I'm just as shocked as everyone else. I can't imagine how such a terrible accident could occur. The word accident hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning. Officer Martinez studied me for a long moment, his pen hovering over his notebook. The silence stretched between us like taffy, sweet and uncomfortable. I could see him weighing possibilities, calculating probabilities, trying to decide if the elderly woman sitting across from him in her neat living room was capable of what he was clearly thinking. Mrs. Baker, he said carefully, when was the last time you were in your husband's vehicle? Tuesday morning, I replied without hesitation. I cleaned it. I clean both our cars every Tuesday. It's part of my routine. I gestured toward the window where his sedan still sat in the driveway, gleaming innocently in the afternoon sun. I'm very particular about cleanliness, officer. 30 years of keeping a home will do that to you. He wrote something down. And did you notice anything unusual in the car? Anything out of place? I tilted my head as if considering. What kind of unusual things do you mean? Any containers, bottles, tubes, anything that seemed like it shouldn't be there? Officer Martinez, I said gently, I'm an old woman who cleans her husband's car. I find all sorts of things that probably shouldn't be there. Fast food wrappers, old receipts, loose change. I throw away the trash and leave the rest. I don't inventory the contents of his vehicle. It wasn't a lie. Not technically. I had found something. I had dealt with it. The facts were all true, just arranged in a way that protected me. He nodded slowly, flipping his notebook closed. The hospital says your husband is claiming this was an accident. That he had no idea the tube contained adhesive instead of something else. His cheeks colored slightly. But Mrs. Baker, someone had to have switched those products. Industrial adhesive doesn't just appear in place of personal lubricant. No, I agreed. I suppose it doesn't. Do you have any idea who might want to harm your husband? Anyone who had access to his vehicle? I thought about this, genuinely. Officer, my husband is a real estate agent. He meets dozens of people every week. His car is parked in public lots, office buildings, open houses. Anyone could have accessed it if they wanted to. I paused, letting my voice drop. But I think the more important question isn't who had access to his car. It's who he was with when this accident occurred. Officer Martinez's expression shifted, recognition, perhaps even respect. You didn't know about the affair? I didn't know, I said, and it was the truth. I'd suspected, felt it, intuited it, but knowing and suspecting are different countries separated by an ocean of proof. Not until last night when everyone else in the neighborhood found out. That's quite a way to discover your husband's been unfaithful, don't you think? He had the grace to look sympathetic. I'm very sorry, Mrs. Baker. So am I, officer. So am I. After he left, I sat in the growing afternoon light and felt something I hadn't expected, sadness. Not regret. Those are different things entirely. But sadness for what we'd been, Thomas and I, before it all went wrong. We'd been young once, in love once, real once. Somewhere along the way, he'd decided that wasn't enough. And somewhere along the way, I'd become invisible to him, the woman who cleaned and cooked and maintained the stage set of our life while he pursued something more exciting off script. The sadness wasn't heavy enough to make me wish I'd done things differently. It was just there. An acknowledgement of endings. My phone buzzed. Sarah again. This time I answered. Mom. Finally. What's going on? Dad's lawyer called me. He says Dad might press charges against someone for tampering. Do you know what he's talking about? I almost laughed. Of course Thomas would threaten legal action. Facing his own choices was never his strong suit. Charges against whom, sweetheart? I don't know. That's what I'm asking you. Mom, people are saying horrible things online. There are photos from last night. It's everywhere. And Dad won't talk to anyone except through his lawyer now. Your father made his choices, Sarah. Now he's dealing with the consequences. That's how life works. There was a pause. Mom, do you know something? I closed my eyes. My daughter. My brilliant, perceptive daughter who'd inherited my intuition and her father's stubbornness. I know that your father betrayed our marriage. I know that he humiliated himself and me publicly. And I know that whatever happened to him, he brought it on himself. That's not really an answer. It's the only one I have, honey. Another pause. Then softer. Are you okay? Like really okay? I'm better than I've been in years, I said and meant it. The news spread like poison ivy through our community. By Sunday, I couldn't go to the grocery store without encountering stares and whispers. Some people crossed the street to avoid me, whether from awkwardness or judgment, I couldn't tell. Others stopped me to offer sympathy that felt more like curiosity wrapped in a bow. Mrs. Patterson, bless her heart, brought me a casserole. For your strength, she said, patting my hand. Everyone's talking about what happened. That poor girl, Jessica, she quit her job and moved back to her parents' house in Ohio. Can't show her face around here anymore. And Thomas? I asked, knowing she was dying to tell me. Still in the hospital. They had to do surgery, Alice. Surgery. To separate them. The doctors say it'll be weeks before things work properly again, if you know what I mean. She leaned in conspiratorially. And the medical bills. Without insurance covering it, since it wasn't really an accident, he's looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars. I accepted the casserole with appropriate solemnity. Life has a way of balancing the scales, doesn't it? It certainly does, she agreed, though I don't think she caught my meaning. The divorce papers arrived on Wednesday, delivered by Thomas's lawyer. I signed them at my kitchen table without reading the details. My own lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia whom my daughter had recommended, assured me I was getting everything I deserved. The house, half his retirement, half his business assets, and spousal support. He's not fighting it, Patricia said, impressed. Usually in these cases, there's more resistance. But his lawyer says he just wants it over quickly. He's embarrassed, I said simply. He wants to disappear and start over somewhere people don't know what happened. That's going to be difficult. This story made regional news. Local man and secretary hospitalized in bizarre adhesive incident. It's become something of a cautionary tale. I permitted myself a small smile. Cautionary tales are important. They teach people about consequences. Patricia studied me with sharp eyes. Mrs. Baker, off the record, did you have anything to do with what happened to your husband? I cleaned his car, I said, meeting her gaze. I found evidence of his affair. And I decided not to be the kind of woman who stays with a man who treats her like she's invisible. That's all I did, Patricia. I took control of my own story. She nodded slowly. Sometimes that's the bravest thing we can do. Thomas left town in November, 3 weeks after being discharged from the hospital. He moved to Arizona, somewhere far from knowing eyes and wagging tongues. I heard through Michael that he'd sold his share of the real estate business, that he was starting over with a new company, a new life. Good for him. I stayed in our house, my house now. I planted new roses in the spring, joined a book club, started taking watercolor classes at the senior center. Sarah visited more often, sometimes bringing her children, who filled the rooms with laughter I hadn't heard in years. On the anniversary of that Tuesday morning, the day I found the tube, I sat on my porch with my evening wine and thought about justice. Not the kind that comes from courts and lawyers, but the kind that comes from understanding that sometimes you have to be your own rescue. People in town still whisper about what happened. Some think I knew nothing. Some suspect everything. But nobody can prove anything, and after a while, even the most delicious scandal loses its flavor. I sleep better than I have in decades. And every Tuesday, I still clean my car. Just my car now. And I smile. Thank you for walking this journey with me, dear ones. If my story touched your heart, made you think, or reminded you that you're stronger than you know, please subscribe to Grandma Alice Stories. Hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a tale of wisdom, resilience, and the quiet power of women who refuse to be invisible. Remember, life gives us choices every single day. Choose yourself. Choose your dignity. Choose your peace. I'll be here next time with another story, another lesson, another reminder that we're never too old to write our own endings. Until then, keep your head high and your heart strong.